So right out of the chute, this is another clone I picked up on everybody's least favorite Chinese website. The clone of the TOPS Armado 6.5. Obviously the scales don't look exactly like the TOPS, and it's probably 440 or some other mystery metal. But this thing showed up razor sharp. If you look at some of the other shorts that I had and stuff like that, it held one hell of an edge, and it did pretty good work, honestly. The scales felt cheap. I'm not sure that they're even solid. They might be like skeletonized on the inside. The scabbard was pretty good. It came with a Chinese version of a tech lock, which I took off of it. And in hindsight, I wish I had put it back on. So I'm going to do a little bit of cutting. And this ratchet strap was pulled up out of a dirt like driveway. So it's just impregnated with dirt and crap. So it's going to affect the edge as I'm cutting through it some. And that's not making excuses. That's just reality. If you're actually out cutting on dirty stuff or, doing something like that, using it as a working tool, you're going to encounter dirt and things like that. It just is what it is, and that's going to affect the edge. And so, yeah, it didn't have a fresh edge to start with, kind of like the last couple of reviews. These are all knives I've used for quite a bit, pretty extensively, just here and there in the woods, in rotation over several months. And that didn't really feel like it wanted to cut there, but there's a lot of freaking dirt. You'll see as I cut long ways on this later that there's a lot of fiber and dirt coming out of it. So I think it's a pretty good test of an edge, and it was pretty sharp, but it wasn't crazy. It's not a fresh edge, but it got the job done. Not a bad deal. So just a little bit more cutting with this. Wanted to go long ways with it, and it went through pretty easy, but you can see a lot of dirt coming out of that and just fiber coming off of it. And just a little bit of like workplace everyday task, cutting some of this tubing. If you're the kind of guy that would EDC a knife like this, and I do that sometimes, not where I work, but on my time off, and I still do things that, maybe require some cutting like this at home, or around other families' property, or whatever, helping friends or whatever. Work done outside of work. I'm all about carrying a big blade, and it does a pretty decent job as far as cutting all that just average everyday cutting tasks. I'm gonna do a little bit of feather sticking. I'm just taking some of the little knobs off of this from tiny little branches that would come off of it, and then get into the feather sticking on it. Do a little fire ignition just to show, because I kind of consider this a camp knife. This is another one of those medium-sized blades that I think for my purposes and my thought process, it's a camp knife, and it does pretty good at this. This piece of wood was just laying in the yard, and it, maybe not the most premium piece. I could tell there's a touch of rot to it, but, at the core, it starts doing the things, and it's fine. So you could, and one thing about like the edge geometry of this, or just the shape of this blade, is it makes it really easy to get a good angle to do feather sticks and just whittling and carving tasks like that. And that may not be small enough to do fine stuff, but it's definitely got the edge geometry to lend itself to being good at the woodsman tasks. And the spine does a pretty good job of raking off some powder off of some fat wood for a little bit of fire ignition here. I do hate the jimping on this knife. It's way too aggressive in my opinion, and I don't know if they designed it for some certain task that I don't know. I imagine and granted, this is a TOPS design that was stolen by the Chinese. It is what it is. I bought it because it's cheap, and I like testing this. I don't know if anybody else has taken these clones out and like putting them through a few months of use in real world testing. Maybe a few. I've seen some reviews, but most of them are tabletop bullshit, and they barely use the knife or don't use it on anything hard. So I'm trying to put these through all the tests that you would put a knife that you want to depend on through. And we're going to see if they're dependable. And you can already see through the last video, I busted the tip off the Brachimo clones. And this is from the same damn website, and we're gonna we're going to beat on this one and just put it through its paces as well. Did find getting a little fire ignition there. Alright, so I realize that this is complete and utter overkill on batoning any knife, but it's still fun, and you don't have to baton a knife for survival. It's not a needed thing. Just like I said in the last video, you can pretty well bust up what you need. This is the kind of thing that you'd put on once you've got a good sustained fire, but it's still a durability test. And this piece of pine, it's like a, I don't know, 4x4 post or whatever. It had some knots in it, and I was still trying to baton through it. It got stuck quite a bit, and I put a valiant effort into busting through it just because I wanted to see if it can take the pressure, and we're about to see if it can do just that. I think that this knife does pretty well on most of the cutting and camp tasks and stuff, and I just think that this is more durability and tip test and like edge test if your edge is going to have problems or things like that. Pine shouldn't be that big a deal, but when you got knots and things like that in it, it can become problematic. And this is like the other. I'm just having to like bust chunks off of it, and that's a knot at the beginning part there, and that's fat wood in there. So I'm actually probably gonna shave the edges off that and use it for fire start. And I might as well. It's a resource, so I might as well bust it open. So yeah, in some of this commercial lumber, you can find that there's fat wood in it, you know, on the pine stuff, especially on posts and things like that. So that's just another resource for prepping stuff and just something to file away in your toolbox if you need some, if you're in the boog apocalypse, shit hit the fan, you can find something that's a wet weather fire starter in commercial lumber if you're willing to look. Try to go right down the center of it again. And you know, I'm thankful the tip didn't bust off batoning. It's just one of those things that, you know, it's a little bit of a test of it, but I don't think that this tip is, let's just say, durable enough to even think that it would pass a tip test stabbing into a log and bending it over. And now we have noticed the fly in the ointment. The fly in the ointment, I hit a knot directly trying to baton through. And granted, I said in the beginning that was overkill. I think a lot of knives would do this. But again, this is a test on, you know, real world use and hard use. And this is pretty much unnecessarily hard use of these clone knives. Good view of the fat wood in there. But yeah, this is an autopsy. This knife died in the batoning process. Would I buy this knife again? Absolutely. It came totally razor sharp. I shaved my leg with it in a short. It held up to all the cutting tasks. It passed with flying colors on everything but some batoning through knots. And a lot of knives would give up the ghost batoning through knots, and this just happened to do it. So there's your durability test on this knife. It's not gonna pass on some of the harder things. Just is what it is. I still think it's a good buy for 25 bucks. Now, buy it or don't. I really don't care. And I don't know the difference between batches, but I do know that for 25 bucks, you're getting a pretty good cutter. It's just got limits like all blades do. This one's a pretty good one. Again, the jimping sucks, but overall, I do like the blade, and I think it's worth 25, even if it died in the process here. It just is what it is. Some are going to give up the ghost, and we're going to have to live with that. And I can live with losing 25 bucks. So thanks for watching, guys. I know some of these are long-winded on these later reviews, but I'm kind of feeling like I want to lean into the long-form stuff while still doing a lot of shorts and different stuff like that. And just thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.